Hi, my name is Ashish, and in this video series, this is the part 1. I'm sorry I forgot to mention it, but yes, we will deploy and run a containerized web app with Azure App Service. So this is part 1, and I'll also post part 2 as well. So let me just quickly log on to the portal and take it from there. Alright, so as I already mentioned that we can build and deploy Azure-based web apps by using Docker containers. This approach enables us to roll out a web app quickly. Support for continuous delivery ensures that users see the latest build of the app while minimizing administrative overhead. Suppose that we work for an already successful company that is testing a new software as a service product, also known as SaaS product. The small team working on it is moving quickly. When they began, they were not sure where they were going to host the app. So they choose to package the app into a Docker container to improve the efficiency of their development process and maximize their options for deployment. They are ready to deploy the first version and they expect to be iterating quickly. Then the team decide to deploy the new app as a web app that uses Azure App Service, a platform for hosting the web applications. The code for a web app running in App Service can be supplied as a Docker image. So we will elaborate how to create and store Docker images in Azure Container Registry. I know we have done that, but we will do it to streamline the whole process. We'll see how we use these images that are stored in the container registry to deploy a web app. Then we'll learn how to configure the continuous deployment so that the web app is redeployed whenever a new version of the image is released. Alright. So to start with, we will first build and store images by using Azure Container Registries. So you all know that Container Registry is an Azure service that we can use to create our own private Docker registries like Docker Hub. Container Registry is organized around repos that contain one or more images. I'll show you when we'll provision it. Container registries also let us automate tasks such as redeploying an app when an image is rebuilt. So I will launch the Cloud Shell as always, and I will configure it. Let me pause the video and come back. Okay. I will do the command line to create the container registry. You can create from the portal as well. So I'll do ACR create, and I will add the name parameter. It would be test Azure ACR, and the resource group would be test Azure RSG. Sorry, I will add SKU as standard and admin would be enabled as true. Let's see how it goes. It is done, right? So in addition to storing and hosting images, we can also use Container Registry to build images. Instead of building an image yourself and pushing it to Container Registry, we can use the CLI to upload the Docker file and another file that makes up my image, right? Now the Container Registry will then build the image for us, and then we can use the ACR build command to run the build. So if I do ACR build file, like this Docker file, registry, the one that I created, test Azure ACR, and then I will specify the image. Like I don't have an image, but if I want to do it, I will do it this way, right? Because I don't have a Docker file, but I can use these commands to build my image within the ACR, right? After that, you build and store an image by using the Azure Container Registry. So Azure Container Registry is the storage for Docker images in the cloud. So if I go here and I click on all resources, you would see that I have an ACR here. I go onto this. So this is my ACR. Is SKU standard. So you see this is how I create it, right? So now I again would go to my Cloud Shell. Like this. Okay, I will go to my Cloud Shell and I will run the command to download the source code for this simple web app that I will deploy to my Azure App Service using the containerization process. It would be a single page static web app. So I would use a git clone to clone this repository. Let me do it. I will do a paste here. To git clone, this is the URL from which I am cloning the sample app. Right? Now I will go to that folder in which this folder. And so if you do ls, here is a Docker file, here is a sample web, and here is a sample web.solution file as well. Right? So we will run the ACR build command that I ran previously to build an image out of this Docker file. So this command sends the folder's content to Azure Container Registry, right, which uses the instructions in the Docker file to build the image and store it. So if you want to see the Docker file, right, so this is the Docker file from Microsoft.NET. This application would be a base image, then it would expose the port 80, then as a build it would change the work directory to source, right, and then it says build it and publish it, and from this entry point.NET they copy it to the app folder. Alright, so I would do ACR build. Registry is I would add my container registry name, which is test Azure ACR. Hold on. I go back here. Easy ACR build, and my registry name is test Azure ACR. Alright, and the image name is web image. And it would place in the current directory. Hit enter. Right. Downloading source code, finishing source code, scanning for dependencies, pull complete, download complete. right? So now it is running the commands that I showed you in that Docker file. All right. Again, the pull is complete, and you see this IDs. This is the temporary containers that this Docker file creates for the execution of all the commands. So it creates a container, run those commands, and then delete the container. So these are not the container IDs which you actually would need to know and make a record of it. But this is the temporary containers that are runtime instances to execute the commands that are mentioned in the Docker file. See, running in this. So this is the temporary container ID it created, removing intermediate container. You see, it created this container, then it removed the intermediate container. Right? Now it will take some time. Let me pause it and come back. Okay, this is completed, right? So the Docker file contains the step-by-step instructions for building a Docker image from the source code for the web app. Azure Container Registry would run these steps to build the image, and as each step is complete, a message is generated, right? And now we will examine the container registry. So I will take you to the GUI. Okay, so this is your container registry. And here you see the repositories. Here you see a web image repository that it created, and you would see a latest image, right? You click on it. This is the Docker pull command if I want to pull this image onto my desktop, right? So for that you have to install Docker on your laptop and it should be running. So if I don't know if you can see it, Docker on my machine is stopped as of now. That is why I'm using Azure Cloud Shell. Right. So now you have to deploy a web app by using an image from the Azure Container Registry. And we can deploy a web app to Azure App Service directly from the Azure Container Registry. And let's say the team that is working on it wants to host the web app in the app service. They need to configure app service to retrieve the image for the web app from the repository in container registry. So you should also have a web app in place on Azure if you want to host this container image on or deploy this container image onto this web app, right? So when you create a web app from a Docker image, you configure some properties. You configure the registry that contains the image name, which is in the repo of that container registry. You also define the tag, which indicates which version of the image to use from the repo. Because if you see, this is a tag web image latest. So if I make some changes in the image, I would have to give it a different tag because that version I want to deploy next time onto my Azure App Service from this container image. The startup file. So this would contain an executable file or a command to be run when the image is loaded, right? So we will continue with this exercise in the next video where we create and deploy a web app from the Docker image. So I hope you liked this video. Stay tuned for part 2. And if you have any further queries, please mention them in the comment section. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you. Have a good day.